Hey, this is Matt, and you're listening to Bluegrass Jam Along, the podcast for anyone and everyone who loves bluegrass. Hey everybody, welcome back. This is your Bluegrass Briefing for Monday, May 29th, 2023. So, on the podcast last week, had a new tune for the first time in a while. We had the old spinning wheel, and there's 4 tracks for that. The usual, you play lead, you play rhythm, jam along, and a performance. Yeah, it's cool. I really like that tune, and it's nice to have some tunes on the podcast again. I've enjoyed that. I'm looking forward to doing some more of those. Also, which we haven't had for a while, there was a Food for Thought episode. And again, if you're new to the podcast, it's a short episode, really. Just me having a little muse about a thing that has occurred to me, or I've heard, or I've read, or I've thought, or somebody said to me. And this was just about things that frighten us as musicians, things that hold us back. And somebody said something cool, and I thought I'd share it. So dig that one out. That was on Friday. And yeah, coming up this week, this is an interview week. I've got an interview with Brittany and Natalie Haas. Their duo record. Amazingly, even though they're sisters and have been playing music together their whole life, they've not actually released a duo record before, and they have, and it's brilliant. And I've chatted to them about that, and that's going to come out this week, so keep your eyes open for that. But that's what's been on the pod, that's what's coming up on the pod, and we are going to move on to Church Street News. And the news this week, what's going on? I mentioned this a few weeks ago, Tyler Grant has a new flat picking course on Artist Works, and I mentioned that was coming, but that's actually live now. You can go and sign up for it, and they've got some great stuff on Artist Works for flat pickers. They've got Bryan Sutton, they've got Chris Eldridge, but there's also now Tyler Grant, and that's a really cool option. I think really interesting, kind of different take. And yeah, go and have a look at that. Look at all. I mean, the Artist Works courses in general are just cool. It's a great way to learn and a great way to get a bit of direct feedback from some just really good musicians. So I thought I'd point that out. And then coming up this month, it's always in June, is the Wayne Henderson Festival and Guitar Competition, Grayson Highlands State Park in Mouth of Wilson, Virginia. It's always some of the region's best traditional musicians as the guitar competition. Sounds like a cool thing. So that's coming up in June. Go and check that out if that's in your area or something you fancy having a look at. That's it. No more news and announcements this week. We're going to move on to The Grass is New. And what is new this week? Well, there's some stuff coming up. That's what I'm going to tell you about this week. There's a new Tim O'Brien album due on June the 16th called Cup of Sugar. And if you've looked at the singles and heard the singles and listened to them on the playlist, you will realise that both of them so far, Little Lamb and The Bear, have been about animals. And I thought, well, are we going to get a whole record full of animal-themed songs? Not quite, but it's not far off. There's a few on there. And I've had a listen to that. I've got a copy of that already, and it is brilliant. And I'm going to talk to Tim about that. I'm going to chat to Tim in a couple of weeks, and I'm really looking forward to that. I talked to Tim for the Doc Watson episodes, which was such a cool conversation. Tim's a wonderful musician and a fascinating guy, and I'm looking forward to talking to him again. But yeah, his new record's out. I'll remind you when it's out, so you don't miss it. But yeah, very good. Tim O'Brien's Cup of Sugar album coming out in a few weeks. And another band, a new band that I've had on my radar for a little bit now, East Nash Grass. I first heard about these guys when I interviewed Bronwyn Keith Hines, and she was chatting about who played on her record, and Harry Clark's on there and James Key's on there. And then I interviewed Dan Tyminski, and several of them play with him. And then I interviewed Harry Clark, and they're just, it sounds like what they've got going on is really cool. And I really enjoyed the couple of singles, but they have a full-length album coming out in August called Last Chance to Win, and I've had a sneak listen to that already as well, and that is really good. So I'm hopefully going to chat to them at some point over the summer about that. But yeah, East Nash Grass, I've got a record coming in the summer, so that's going to be really interesting. I love what I've heard of it already, and I think a lot of people are going to like that. And finally, as I said at the top of the episode, I've got an interview coming out with Haas. Their record is now out. I've had a track off that on the playlist for a while now, but the record is out. It's so good. Just a duo, just cello and 5-string fiddle, and I really like it. I think it's really interesting and also just really beautiful and beautifully played. And so go and check that out. I will stick a link to their Bandcamp in the show notes, so you can go and sort of go find that direct, because that is now out. And that's it for The Grass is New. Which brings us on to Scroll On Buddy, which is the section where I point out something that I've seen on social media. And the thing I saw on social media this time was me. I get those funny little alerts from Facebook where it says this is what you were doing on this day 7 years ago or whatever. And often it's something innocuous and often it's something brilliant. And just this one was a photo of my fingers with massive grooves in them from playing the guitar from 3 years ago today. And it made me realise that was sort of the start of this journey, really. I posted a picture on Facebook of my fingers battered and bruised while playing guitar for so long. And just saying that I haven't had that for years. I hadn't played guitar that much in a long time. And being at home in lockdown, I'd started picking my guitar up again instead of the mandolin and started playing it and falling back in love with it, really. And just sort of set me off on a little road of flat picking, which developed into being kind of a thing. I played music most of my life, and I've played acoustic guitar for a lot of that. But I just set off on this little flat picking road, which led me to Bryan Sutton's Artist Works course, and then led a little bit later to this podcast starting. And I've been going just over 2 years now. But that thing at the beginning of the first lockdown here in the UK, when nobody could go anywhere, was really the seed of me starting to play guitar again with any intent. And it was a nice thing just to see that photo pop up and think about recording this today and all the people I've talked to since, and all the people who've listened to this and jammed along, and all the conversations I've got to have about bluegrass with some incredibly, incredibly inspirational people. It all came about because I couldn't go anywhere because there was a pandemic. So it's just nice to think something good came out of that. So it's just nice to look backwards sometimes and reflect. And that is Scroll On Buddy for this week. Which just leaves me to tell you what's been in my ears this week, which has been quite a lot of the Tim O'Brien record, quite a lot of the East Nash Grass record, and I've been listening to quite a bit of Clarence White recently, just sort of digging back into Kentucky Colonels and Clarence, and listening to the Byrds, Sweetheart of the Rodeo, and just, I've been thinking about Clarence a bit recently, and I'll tell you a bit more about why in the next couple of weeks, because there's a little project relating to Clarence coming up on the podcast. Won't be as big as the Tony and Doc stuff, but putting together a little something relating to Clarence White that'll be out in maybe a couple of months. So I'll tell you a bit more about that. But I've been listening to quite a lot. Clarence is a guitarist I know a little bit less about compared to Tony or Doc or some of the others. And I sort of came to Clarence first through Sweetheart of the Rodeo and the sort of more country rock side of things, which is really sort of part of how I got into bluegrass. So I've been listening to a lot of Clarence this week and really enjoying it. But that's it. I'm going to see you next week. All the usual stuff applies. Please do go and rate the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Leave me a review. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. All of that stuff. Sign up for the mailing list, and I can tell you what's going on in the weeks to come. But in the meantime, have a great week. I will see you with the Hass interview later this week. Happy picking. Bluegrass Jam Along is proud to be sponsored by Collings Guitars and Mandolins, making some of the finest guitars and mandolins in the world since the 1970s. Visit collingsguitars.com and find out why.